Okay, recording in progress. That's the sound I want to hear. So, hello everyone. Welcome to SEO podcast episode. We called this podcast SEO Happy Hour in the past, but now I'm not even sure. Like, should we call it like that or SEO podcast? But yeah, we will move a needle further. Today's guest is a Sukh, SEO freelancer with 15 years of experience. Last 4 years are coming from freelance gigs and projects, clients, but before that he was head of SEO. His experience is coming from the agency work. So thank you so much for joining the call. And also, I want to say a topic very quickly. Our topic is ways to develop confidence. So basically, we will give people the value how they can develop their confidence that is really needed in the SEO industry. So, Sukh, thank you so much for joining the call and welcome.
Thanks for having me, Adriana. Yeah. No, really excited about this podcast. Yeah, I've been watching it for a while. So yeah, thanks for having me.
All right. So I was talking a lot about confidence, but like let's think like how you are developing your confidence and what helped you the most in these getting the skills.
Yeah, there's quite a few things. So it kind of built up over time, obviously, as you can imagine. So doing it for 15 years. So I think initially it started with client pitching and business development and being involved with those meetings and creating presentations. And I guess I came from a time where you were I say more accountable, but you tend to be put on the spot quite often as an exec. And so that was quite a learning curve of, being put on the spot by bosses, seniors, clients, and kind of learning on the job as well. Because at that time, I started in 2009 in SEO, and before that, I did web design when it was separated between design and development for about 3-4 years. But SEO wise, there wasn't really a lot to learn from. You had to learn on the job. So that included communication, presentation, reading clients' body language, for example, all these little things. And the confidence started building over time from being thrown into situations and doing it the hard way. And then over time from, different mentors, different types of presentations, doing webinars, conferences, etc. So it was a gradual thing. But as you can imagine, there were a few standout occasions of, bits of advice, information, mentors that really helped me level up. And so, yeah, it was a gradual thing. But I feel like I'm more aware of things that can help your confidence and hinder it now as an slightly older person versus then. And so I'm quite excited about talking about this and developing that further within myself.
Mm-hmm. And what kind of challenges you were experiencing during getting your confidence?
Yeah, so imposter syndrome, I guess. And Yeah, I guess it's so coming from an agency environment, it's quite easy to be exposed to different personality types, different stakeholders and things, and you kind of get to sharpen your tools a bit in terms of communication. So that was a good plus. The minus would probably be the hectic environment and having to react to certain things and learning how to cope with that. So for example, dealing with senior stakeholders for the first time, your confidence might be a little bit low because you're like, okay, so you're going to be put on the spot a few times and they might have more knowledge. They've definitely got more knowledge in the industry. So you've got to have some preset talking points and have your data on point and just to be open for criticism and say, yeah, I'll go back. And so those were the initial types of challenges I would have. And then I'd have to go back and learn, okay, how can I do that better? And, the main motivation was not be embarrassed in the room, but also be better at my job and develop this client moving forwards. So I think those on the spot challenges were kind of some of the main places that I learnt how to develop my general confidence in a professional setting. And also it transferred to personal life as well.
Mm-hmm. And you mentioned imposter syndrome. So imposter syndrome is a base or towards getting the confidence. What I see in the industry is actually that people are thinking that imposter syndrome is something good that you need to have to actually boost your career, to progress your career. So what did you think about imposter syndrome? How did you approach it, and like what has been changed?
Yeah, it's so one example would be doing my first conference talk. When was that? 2006, 17, 18, I want to say. So there were a lot of big speakers on the agenda, and I had to kind of say to myself, okay, so I've memorized all of my talking points. I know the in and outs of my topic, so I'm confident about that. But Q&A, I think, okay, yeah, what if I'm thrown off and I don't have an answer and things like that. So I had to think a lot about, okay, well, there are other speakers as well, so they have experience, but I'm focused on my topic and I'm confident enough to talk about it. And I just relied on the facts and the data initially because those are the tangible things to me. And then later on, speaking at other events and things, the feedback I got afterwards was way different than what I had in my head, what my expectations were. Like, oh yeah, you did really well, and that thing that I thought was quite big, like, oh, that went over their head, or maybe I rambled a bit, or I didn't answer that question fully. People were like, oh no, you hit it spot on. And so I had to come to terms with what my idea is and how I conflate a situation in my head versus reality. So that
Mm-hmm.
reassures, so that came with experience as well. So I thought in the future, whenever I think, oh, I'm worried about this, I'm anxious about this, I think actually you're probably blowing this out of proportion and let's just focus on the facts. Um,
Mm-hmm.
that's kind of how I deal with it at the moment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's the thing, like what is happening in your head versus like reality. Because when
Yeah,
we are living in our head, like we are making so many different scenarios and definitely much more worse scenarios than actually what is happening in front of us. And
yeah.
like you mentioned that you have been afraid with these like Q&As. So for your thing, like what was the I don't know question or like that you would be afraid, or like is it just like not having the answer, or like what would the impact you most like in that confidence level?
I think it's probably not having the answer. So I don't know if you have similar or you had similar feelings in that, but yeah, that was quite a biggie. But for me, that came from being put on the spot earlier in my career as well, and being chastised for not having answers or things like that. So that's a kind of I guess that's a unique hang up. But I think other people relate to generally just being in a group in front of people and not having an answer and being seen as the professional. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but I've become more comfortable with not having answers because the thing is, everyone's at conferences to learn, including the speakers. Therefore, and in our industry, you have to upskill all the time. So you constantly don't have answers. You're constantly
Mm-hmm.
answering questions every day when you're reading case studies and blogs. So you got
Yeah.
to be comfortable with that. I think reasonable people respect you more for admitting, oh yeah, I don't know, but I will research that and come back to you.
Yeah, and that is basically that we very often need to say with a client, because we can just go there and like have all these answers. But usually people are connecting not having the answer with their own like professionalism or worth, their worth. But
Yeah.
like in the end of the day, like we know that like it's not connected. Like if I don't have the answers right now, that doesn't mean that I'm not valuable, I'm not worthy, I'm not as your professional, or like I'm not valuable as your player in the industry, right?
Yeah, 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 exactly. Yeah.
And during these years and experience, what did you see like the comparison between getting like technical skills, how that impacting your confidence versus getting like these soft skills that you mentioned and impacting that confidence?
Yeah, the technical skills were more straightforward to draw confidence from because it's just black and white. You know how to do something or you don't, so you can fall back on that and just kind of be the nerd in the room, I guess. And that allows you to be a little bit awkward and a bit of leeway to be like, okay, now here are the facts, whatever. And then sales guy can deal with whatever the personality thing is going on here and how to sell it all to you and all that. So that was my initial tactic, and then the soft skills came over time, observing my sales colleagues and my boss. And she would basically be really good at these soft skills of reading body language, talking to people, mirroring things like that. And not in a bad way, but in a kind of like, well, I just want to get us on the same page so that we can have a fair kind of communication about these are the facts, this is what's going to help you, blah blah blah. And so what all these people did to get to that point of where you can communicate your thing, where they're listening to you and they're they're reasonable. I learnt that over time, and that together with the technical stuff helped me. I used to get decent sales towards the end because of that, and working with great people, obviously. Um, so yeah, that's kind of how those both things kind of helped over time.
Yeah, that is basically the same trend that I'm seeing. Like when you are entering the SEO world, like you really need to learn these technical skills. But after
Mm.
like 2, 3 years, you see that actually like the level of confidence and feeling good about yourself is not increasing at the same level as much as you're learning like technical things. And then there is a little bit gap. And then you are ready to actually incorporate all these like soft skills, communicational skills, becoming confident in your field to actually reach the next level. Because after like 4 or 5 years in the SEO industry, you really can't move the needle further for becoming the head of SEO, for becoming like director of SEO, even like freelance, because if you don't have the confidence to reach that next level for your career.
Yeah, I've noticed that as well. So I work with a lot of agencies and heads of SEO, and a lot of people are quite young as well, and they're super like capable technically and all that stuff as well, and quite personable as well. But then when we have group calls and things like that, I do notice certain things where I think, oh, I remember when I was nervous about that particular thing, or I didn't know how to deal with that strong personality. And it's hard as a freelancer to be like, oh, you want to be like, if you're in an agency environment, I could be like, hey, listen, you can do this and that, blah, blah, blah. But obviously I don't really have a say. So I'm just thinking, and I did notice that point as well. And I thought, oh, right. A lot of people do progress off the back of their technical skills, rightly so. But then, like, they could really do with proactively learning this other stuff that took me years to learn, from situations and stuff. So
Mhm.
yeah, I think that's a really good, if people can somehow do that, uh, you know, you'll have all the soft skills and the technical skills. You'd be unstoppable.
And what did you actually use from other things, tools to develop your confidence? You mentioned also mentors, anything else?
Yeah, confidence wise. So I'll, for example, my uncles are quite, successful and professional. They're working. All of us are working class, and their working class mentality. That grew up with two jobs, studied at the same time, all this kind of stuff, as well as my mum. My mum's quite helpful in this as well, indirectly and directly. So she studied. So basically, she's a single parent, and in her 40s, she just basically decided to study from scratch. So she didn't get to go to college or university growing up, and so she basically redid her GCSEs, A levels, and university equivalents to get a couple of degrees. Became a teacher, and during that process, and she used to had to raise teenagers, two boys and a young girl and stuff, and so that was causing a lot of trouble. So I always all revert back to that when times are really difficult, and I think, how can I do this? And I think, well, all these people are going into big rooms in front of big people, and doing these things and all that, whilst dealing with kids and all these kind of things. And it's like, come on, like, we could do this. And so that's my old school mentality, being like, come on, pick yourself up. People might say, yeah, that's not very productive these days, which is fair enough. But that was my way of rationalizing, okay, if you think it's tough, but there are other, it's all relative. And also relating back to conference talks, the last one that I did, I'd say to myself, hey, I do feel nervous, but remember the last time you did it, you felt so great afterwards and you learned a lot. And it sounds cheesy, but you actually do. And so I just remember from past experience as well, how to get over certain situations, as well as those people that I have high examples of.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's actually reminding yourself what you are capable of. And that is something that we are missing on everyday like basis. And like, when people are saying like grateful and like all these things positive. But I would say just like being aware what we were actually be capable in the past and like how these skills have been developed. So we are capable like even of bigger things today and in the future.
Mm. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, just being aware of what you're capable of, and the proof is there because you've done things in the past, and you wouldn't be speaking at a conference, for example, if you weren't capable and someone didn't see something in you. So, it's I mean, I had this the other day as well. Like, when I was asked by Kelvin a few times after the first conference. Oh yeah, how do you feel about speaking? I'm like, and my first thing was, wonder why he's asking me. Or even I thought, has he got the right email address? And I was like,
Mhm.
oh wow, okay, no, yeah. And then that's a few big things that happened, and I laugh at myself now when I think that, even though my brain initially says that, like, oh, they got the right person. But then I think, come on, we've done this enough times now. There's a reason why they're asking you to do something. So I think it's being more aware of what your capabilities are, like you said, and it is a work in progress. But I'm excited about it because I've seen, oh yeah, there is something to all of these. Just being mindful of these things and how they pay off.
And you also mentioned that family moment, and like you were seeing like these successful people and like how they are taking the next challenge and how they are like starting or over or like running the successful business. But what would you recommend for people who didn't have these kinds of like successful people in their families, didn't get that kind of like confidence, the example, like how they can approach these things, because that is something that they were not seeing in their families?
Yeah, I think looking at the industry and looking at the prominent people and how they, if they share their stories and stuff, how they kind of got to where they are. And so I think people are more likely to share this stuff now these days. And it's great for us, just as consumers, just to kind of see the timeline and stuff and hear their little tips and things. Especially in our industry, I think they're more approachable. Like if you're on LinkedIn or whatever, or we see them at a conference,
Mm-hmm.
and ask them the story. And I think and I think maybe for even for minorities, there's a lot of great examples of people as well that you can look to. And I was thinking about that the other day, which is I think is quite important. So there's a few good examples as well that I saw, and I thought, well, actually, if I was a minority, I am, but if I was me 15 years ago, whatever, 20 years ago, I'd feel way better about and confident about doing things like speaking in front of people if I saw other versions of me out there, or brown and black people in general.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think even the visuals of seeing someone on a big stage and on a big banner that looks like you is really inspiring and motivational.
Mm-hmm. And you can like more relate it to that person, definitely.
Yeah, because then you think it's definitely possible,
For
and
me.
that's yeah, absolutely.
Okay. And also you mentioned mentors. So how your mentors help you to build the confidence?
Yeah, so mental wise, I mean, I don't think I have any right now because I mean, obviously I work by myself now, so I have a group of freelancers, this, that, and the other, and I have old bosses and a couple of old clients that were, so I guess I got one or two mentors in the form of old clients, because at that time I was young and they were quite older, heads of marketing, whatever. And once you get to know people over years and stuff, they kind of see you more as a friend, and then they give you these tips. In fact, one of my old clients told me after the first Brian SEO, or do that as your banner on your LinkedIn, talk about it here, here, here. You need to do your write up, this, that, and the other. And he has no investment in, we have no campaign, whatever. He's just messaging me to say, well done, blah, blah, blah. And so those are kind of mentors, I guess, that I've got. Um, but right now, to be honest, I haven't really thought about it because I've just been so busy doing my freelance work and establishing it that I've it's on the list of making more contacts and friends and being in more environments where I can get this kind of inspiration and ideas from people. So I think I need to seek that out a bit more in the form of networking, those relationships.
Mm-hmm. And can you think about any other way to build confidence that we can share with the audience now?
Yeah, just for me, it's been a gradual thing. So, for example, during COVID, we did webinars every week, and because there are a few of us doing it at the agency, a lot of people had to repeat it and stuff. So, think of new topics and things like that, and that built my confidence again because there'd been a big gap before I spoke in front of a conference audience and stuff. And it was a nice gateway to when, lockdown was lifted, then you do live events again. And I thought, oh, okay, I feel a bit more confident now because I was just in front of a screen, which is fine. And so I think it might be a gradual thing. And if you apply that to someone who maybe hasn't spoken out of confidence or presented in front of big people, then it sounds like really basic, but asking friends and family, yeah, I'm just going to present this thing. You don't have to understand it, but I just want to be comfortable talking and what. And I saw a lot of people doing this after the speaker training, posting their videos and pictures of them speaking from their dogs and their partners and stuff. Um, and so little gradual steps, I think, and then also coming to terms with being scared is good because it means that you're challenging yourself and you're doing something cool and interesting, and that you're going to feel good about it afterwards. And I had to reconcile that. I'd always drive to a conference like Brian SEO, and it takes 3.5 hours, and that's a lot of time to think. I'm going to speak. I'm going to speak. I'm okay with it. Oh no, now I'm nervous again. And then you conclude, oh, it's good to be nervous. It's good to be scared because this is going to feel great on the drive back. You're going to have the windows down. You're going to be blasting, Linkin Park, whatever, and you're going to feel great. And so I think it's like I said, the gradual things, but also feeling confident and reassured that if I feel scared and nervous, it's because it's a big thing and you're going to feel great coming down, kind of thing.
Yeah, and I really love what you mentioned because accepting like what it is in front of you is much more beneficial for you than like rejecting like, oh, I shouldn't be nervous, I shouldn't be scared, like this is not like a big thing for me or like I will survive. Accepting these things are actually making you much more calmer because you're
Yeah.
not putting the additional pressure on, oh, I shouldn't be so scared or I should be all right or something like that.
Yeah, exactly. And trying to kind of live through that moment as well. Like when I did this speaker training last year, I keep referring to it because it's probably the best training I did. It was kind of it wasn't really training, it was just sharing ideas. So the teacher was Matt Matheson, who you can Google. And so one of the takeaways, and he probably didn't mean it as a big takeaway, but he said, "Oh, I understand. We get a whole day here. We're in central London, and it might get hot and all that, and you might, zone out a little bit and not learn." He goes, "This is your opportunity. You're here. You've traveled to learn and to benefit yourself, to make yourself more comfortable. So I want need you to be in the driver's seat. Don't kind of go back to the passenger seat kind of thing. This is your time." And for some reason, that really stuck with me. Like when I was doing my last thing, I did the SERPs Up podcast at the last Brighton SEO with Crystal Carter and some really good panelists as well. A little bit of imposter syndrome beforehand, as I thought, oh yeah, no, Barry Adams here as well, and these other people that are really expert in what they do. I thought, you feel nervous, you're in this now. You just stay in the driver's seat. So whatever happens, at least you can say to yourself, I was in control, I was in present, and I was dealing with it rather than going along with it and kind of coping. So I think being in the driver's seat applies to everything in life as well. Like try and be in control as much, I mean, aware and accepting as much as possible. You're not always in control, but just try and be in the driver's seat and just get the most out of it. So at least you can say, I did everything I could and I've got a lot now to learn and improve the next time I do it.
Yeah, because that being in the driver's seat from the psychological perspective has that thing that like you are in control, you do your things. Because
Yeah,
with a lack of confidence, with imposter syndrome, there is everything like the focus, the energy to control is taken away from us. And then like we are like paralyzed, we froze or like something like that. But when we are shifting like our focus to actually being in the driving seat and like let's take like what we can do, we are getting that control over us and over situation again, and like it's easier to like be yourself at the
yeah,
conference. And I love that you mentioned a lot of example with the conference, and like what I'm seeing with my clients is actually when even they are facing the confidence issue at the client meetings, stakeholder meetings, with all the high management meetings, once they do the conference talk, the confidence is boosting, and also they kind of like they have less issues and struggles and their day-to-day meetings, calls, because basically they went out of their like comfort zone, they did the speaking
yeah.
gig, and then it's much more easier to cope with the confidence, because when you are increasing the confidence little by little, all the smaller things will be much more easier to do.
Yeah, exactly. I even felt that recently. So I think I've done Brightsy about 3 times now and a couple of other conferences. And as soon as I had my first big calls, there was one call that I wasn't super excited about just because of, it's a very difficult project and trying to communicate the value of SEO and things like that to people that aren't 100% bought in yet. I was thinking, how can I approach this in a different way to whatever, what I used to do. And then after this conference, I thought, hey, no problem. I've already got all the answers. The only thing I was nervous about was maybe a little bit of confidence about the value of SEO and my offering in this project. And I said, hey, if they don't see the value, they don't. But I know now how to communicate things as best as I can, and I'm actually not nervous. And it was literally a day after Brighton SEO, and I just felt super confident, like kind of a bit bulletproof. And even in networking of situations, so I'm not, I've had to develop how my strengths in terms of communication and stuff with networking, and now I'm a bit more confident because I did a lot of networking at Brighton SEO. I met a load of freelancers there as well. Just go up to people and talk to people, and I wouldn't have done that 10, 15 years ago so easily. I'd have a wingman, but I'm a sole trader now, so you've got to. That's the other thing, putting yourself in a position where you have to do something. I don't know if that's good or bad, but to me, it's worked out quite well. It's like lining up for a roller coaster. You're in the line now, so you're going to do it. And so that's how I kind of treated the last few things of networking I did, where I know how to do this. I'm just nervous, so I just need to just put myself in that, and then it'll be fine. Um, so yeah, no, but the last conference helped me quite a bit with that confidence.
And always, it's a good thing to actually, behind the nervousness, behind the anxiety, there is a one sentence why we are feeling that. So once we are accepting and like checking, like, hey, I'm nervous, like what other people will think about me? Does it takes like external validation that maybe I will not get? Like, what if I get some criticism or something like that? Just like how you are actually, what you are thinking about yourself, even you maybe get a criticism, or like how the impact of other people, what they think about you, will actually have the kind of like reality and like hits you in the right way. Like, what would be like, people are saying like what would be the worst case scenario, but I would say just like what you would think about yourself even you made a mistake.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, and for me, it's getting well, yeah, it's overthinking basically. And just kind of trying to turn that part of my brain off a little bit and just trying to rationalize everything that you said, like, and what if, worst case scenario, someone calls out a aspect of your project or your experience and say, no, actually, this other expert said on a blog that this is true. And then you can say, well, I've got my experience, so hey, I will look into that though. It's new
Mm-hmm.
information. So you never turn down new information. And then you got to think to yourself, if they're not reassured that you're open to constructive criticism or unconstructive, then that's an unreasonable person. So you shouldn't be too worried about them. You've done your bit. So
Yeah,
yeah,
because very often we are worried about like these people that like we even like wouldn't to be around, or like even to have any kind of discussions, like even the people that we would not like to hang out or something, but like our focus is more on them, like than just like whoever has that like real mindset and saying like, hey, this is his experience, this is some kind of like finding that he would find like why I should like judge that or like put any negative tendency in it. So
yeah, 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 absolutely. And I think having a healthy ego really helps all of this stuff as well, and being open to new ideas. And even if you're flying high and you've done a lot of talks, a lot of presentations, you're getting a lot of new business, this, that, and the other. It's easy to think, oh yeah, no, okay, so I am really good at what I do and stuff, and then and then you're all of a sudden not so open to maybe some criticism or whatever, and it makes you feel uncomfortable. And I think having a healthy ego, or checking your ego, where you're open to this stuff, ingratiates you to people, as well as improving yourself in these soft skills, as well as making yourself more personable and being able to answer questions later on, or just saying, hey, I'm open to new ideas, so I will come back with that
mhm.
on information on that. So I think the ego thing is big, and I think it's a nice networking and talking to other professionals and being on a panel or things like that. It helps keep that in check. Not that I have a problem with that, because I've always had that mindset of, I've always worked with really smart people, and it's, you're too busy thinking, okay, how can I contribute to the team, rather than, oh, I'm this and that, whatever. You're always learning a lot anyway.
Mhm.
I think it's something to keep in mind, definitely, because it helps so much, improve so much aspects of your work and all of these small skills. Just keeping ego in check and being open to new ideas.
Yeah, because these openness for new ideas is actually a possibility to get any kind of feedback, and then taking that feedback, is it useful, and how you can make it useful for your career to actually change something and being more towards your really goal, what you want to achieve. Because without any feedback, without any kind of like these comments, you just can't grow by yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. I was going to ask you as well, what do you recommend in terms of being proactive and learning more about confidence, psychology, things like that? What steps do you recommend for people to kind of, reading material or just generally, keeping things in mind to improve that proactively within themselves?
It depends on the which stage people are in, because we mentioned, like, if the SEO people are entering the SEO world, they should, if they have time, which I assume like they don't, besides the technical learnings, it's very nice to actually watch the videos about like the mindset, read the mindset things. So basically they are learning about these different brain patterns, about like other people, like where they are facing the struggles. But after some time, when you finish kind of like, not finish technical skills, because like we are still learning all these things, but like then what was the most successful thing in my case was working with a coach. Because when you are in a course, you are just like learning, you're listening, but you don't have any feedback. You don't have like any person that is actually identifying like where your mindset is wrong, where you have these barriers, mental barriers, that you can't go over it. So it's much more beneficial, faster, when you have someone that is holding you and seeing like, hey, this is a wrong mindset, this is how successful people think, helps you to identify the blockers that you have and find the reason, like why you are nervous, why you are you have anxiety, why you have this. Because once you solve that, your confidence is boosting, like, and you have default behavior like to be confident. Once
Yeah.
you kind of like clean, it's kind of like cleaning your house. Once you are very like taking care of everything, then like it's just like shining.
Yeah. So you need that feedback basically, and accountability, I guess, as well. Like I have a personal trainer, so I've
Mm-hmm.
worked with them, and I'm really good friends with them as well. Worked with them for 2, 3 years now, um, and I do get that feedback on a daily basis as well as when I'm working out with him. And so I
Mm-hmm.
guess it's the same thing. I've also done CBT in the past, therapy, and so getting
Yeah.
those practical feedback on things of how to recognize triggers and things like anxiety and stuff like that, professionally and personally, and then how to kind of deal with that has been quite useful. So yeah, no, that's good to know.
Mm-hmm. All right. Any questions that you have for me?
Yeah, no, I think yeah, I was trying to think of some because I've been so tied into, so being tunnel vision as a head of SEO is quite common anyway. And then when you're a freelancer as well, it's like, okay, yeah, so I need to do all this other stuff as well. So I was thinking, okay, let's take a step back and where do I want to be? To help ask these questions, how to get there. So I need to do more networking, I need to do more speaking, more publishing of blogs and things like that. And it all needs a level of confidence and like confidence in your abilities and communicate with different types of people. I've just been throwing myself into situations and learning as I go, figuring it out, forcing myself, you know. How can you be more proactive if you want to do a big thing? Let's say someone's thinking, I want to pitch for this conference, or I could never write for this blog. I want to pitch for this. So how can they, what's a simple step, I guess, for them to kind of reassure them and say, okay, if you follow this checklist or this magic list or whatever, how can they start to think more confidently about that?
Mm-hmm. And it would be a simple question like, what is blocking you for pitching, for being proactive? Because like whenever we are not proactive, whenever we are procrastination, there is a huge thing behind that, because we are not procrastinating because we are lazy or something like. We have some mental blockers that are holding us back every day, Maybe we are thinking that we are failure. Maybe we are thinking that we are not good enough. Maybe we are thinking that we don't have much experience. Maybe we thinking that we will be ashamed. Maybe we will think that we will be disappointed. It's very common to actually fear the rejection. Like, what will happen if they reject me? What if I'm proactive and like I don't get like what I want, what I think that I deserve? So these questions are actually leading us to why we are not proactive, why we can't reach the goal or like project that we want. And once we are finding the base of our fears, rejections, or like anything that we face, then it's just like blockade is going away and we are proactive, we are more confident, we are like everything that we want.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, it's just asking why. What's stopping you and procrastinating you from doing that kind of stuff? Yeah. No, that's a good point. Yeah. I've asked myself that in the past when I was on the agency side. I was like, oh yeah, I'd really like to be published in this blog or, speak at this place, whatever. Um, in that case, I just did it. And a couple of times I was forced to do it. So, I had to reconcile afterwards. Oh yeah, no, I could do it. But to think about that productively as well. And yeah, it could help all aspects of your life, I guess, as well. And thinking, okay, I can do all this other stuff as well. And if you have that feeling of nerves and things like that, you have to kind of think, oh, what is causing this, whatever. Um, yeah, no, that's really interesting.
Yeah, why is the reason? And you had that approach, like I will do it anyway, but that is so common for SEOs that like they can't do because like these routes are so hard and like they are not allowing them to make the next step, to make the next move because the blockade is huge.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
All right. So, okay. So I really love this, and thank you so much for the joining. And I will see you in the one of the next SEO Happy Hour episodes.
Yeah, no, it was really interesting. Thanks for having me, Joanna. Yeah, speak to you soon. Thank you.
Nice.